Gwen Stefani thought she was just another VIP on Diddy's guest list, invited to a night of Hollywood glamour where stars mingled and deals were whispered over champagne. But what if the invitation was a lure, a calculated move to draw her into a world where secrets were the currency and silence was the price of survival? From the moment she stepped into his hidden hillside mansion, a creeping unease settled in her gut, a sense that she wasn't a guest, but a player in a game she hadn't agreed to join. The air was thick with guarded glances, locked doors, and an unspoken code that kept everyone in line. When she took the stand in court, her voice steady but simmering with the sting of betrayal, Gwen unraveled a night that was no mere party. It was a meticulously orchestrated machine designed to control, conceal, and erase. A single, terrified glance from a young woman would haunt her forever, and her testimony would send tremors through the music industry, threatening to topple its untouchable giants. The invitation had arrived like so many others in Gwen's world, a casual mention from a mutual friend in the fashion industry, all polished charm and flattery. "Diddy's throwing something intimate," the friend said, voice dripping with excitement. "Good vibes, great people, you should come through." Gwen, a veteran of Hollywood's glittering underbelly, didn't blink. She'd been to countless parties where the guest list was as curated as a gallery exhibit, where networking masqueraded as revelry. But this one felt different, even before she arrived. The address was vague, just coordinates, no street name, tucked deep in the Los Angeles hills where GPS signals faltered. When her car wound up the long, shadowed driveway, she noticed the first red flag. 2 guards in tailored suits, not the usual rent-a-cops in ill-fitting uniforms. They didn't smile or make small talk. One scanned her ID with a handheld device, while the other checked her name against a tablet, their movements precise, almost military. This wasn't a welcome, it was clearance. Inside, the mansion was a study in excess. Crushed velvet draped the walls, chandeliers cast a soft amber glow, and the air hummed with a curated playlist blending smooth jazz and hip-hop. Waiters glided through the crowd, balancing trays of champagne flutes and delicate hors d'oeuvres with names Gwen couldn't pronounce. The guests were the usual mix of Hollywood's elite. Actors, musicians, designers, all polished to perfection, but their laughter felt rehearsed, their smiles too wide. Gwen's instincts, honed by decades in the industry, prickled. The glamour was undeniable, but it felt like a stage set, every detail too perfect, too controlled. She noticed a hallway at the far end of the main room, roped off with a gold chain. Not the decorative velvet ropes of typical VIP sections, but a heavy industrial chain that gleamed with purpose. Curious, she asked an actor she recognized, a familiar face from red carpets, what was behind it. He glanced over, then back at her, his expression blank. "Don't worry about it," he said, sipping his drink. "That's not for us." The phrase landed like a stone in her chest, its weight lingering. As the night unfolded, the party's sheen began to crack. Gwen moved through the crowd, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor, each step amplifying her unease. She noticed young women, stunning, barely in their 20s, dressed in outfits that seemed chosen for them, being led by older, poised escorts into side rooms. They didn't return. At small tables tucked in corners, men in expensive suits huddled, their voices low, their eyes darting like they were guarding something more than their conversations. Gwen sipped her champagne, barely tasting it, her senses attuned to the undercurrent of the room. The music shifted, the bass growing heavier, as if signaling a change in the script. She wandered toward a hallway lined with abstract art, drawn by the need to escape the crowd's forced energy. That's when she saw it. A glass room, floor to ceiling, tinted just enough to obscure details but not intent. Inside, 6 women sat on a plush couch, their backs rigid, eyes fixed on the floor. A man stood nearby, not mingling, not drinking, just watching, his presence heavy, like a guard at a vault. The women didn't look drunk or high. They looked placed, like pieces on a board. Gwen's breath caught. A woman, a stylist maybe, appeared beside her, her voice a whisper. "Stay in the main area, trust me." The words weren't advice, they were a warning. The atmosphere shifted when Diddy arrived. The room didn't erupt in cheers or applause, it tightened like a held breath. Guests straightened, conversation stalled mid-sentence, and the music dipped as if bowing to his presence. He moved through the crowd with a predator's grace, his eyes scanning not with warmth but with ownership. He didn't smile, didn't need to. His presence alone reshaped the room, turning it into his domain. Not just the mansion, but every person in it. Gwen felt it in her bones. This wasn't a party. It was a performance, and she hadn't been given the script. She clutched her untouched drink, forcing a smile, but her eyes missed nothing. Phones were conspicuously absent. No selfies, no texts, no casual scrolling. When she reached for her own, a man in a black shirt materialized, his smile sharp and cold. "We keep things private here." His hand extended, expectant. She handed over her phone without protest, but the act sent a chill through her. This wasn't about privacy. It was about control. Then she saw her. A young woman, maybe 19, in a dress too sheer, too short, her face pale under perfect makeup. An older woman held her arm, guiding her with a grip that looked more like restraint than support. As they passed, the girl's eyes flicked up, meeting Gwen's for a fleeting second. That glance was a silent scream, raw, desperate, alive with fear. Gwen's heart stopped. The girl wasn't high or drunk, she was awake, painfully so, and terrified. She was led past the gold chain, down a dark hallway, and vanished. The air in the room grew colder, the music louder, but that moment burned into Gwen's mind, a splinter she couldn't dislodge. She tried to blend in, moving back to the main area as the stylist had urged, but the signs were everywhere now. The laughter was too sharp, the smiles too tight. Diddy made his rounds, not like a host, but a general, snapping his fingers once to summon 2 women who followed him down a side hallway. No one batted an eye. No one asked questions. The room carried on, but Gwen's pulse raced. She was in a machine, and it was running smoothly. The weight of the night pressed harder. Gwen lingered near the bar, pretending to sip her drink, her eyes scanning for answers. The bartender, expressionless, handed her a glass of water without a word, as if trained to avoid conversation. She noticed guests avoiding eye contact, their movements calculated, like actors hitting their marks. Back near the art-lined hallway, she paused, ears straining for sounds from the glass room, now blacked out, its windows opaque as if it had never existed. A man brushed past her, his voice low and deliberate. "If you didn't see anything, don't say anything." She turned, heart pounding, but he was already swallowed by the crowd. The realization crashed over her. Everyone here was complicit, playing their parts in a choreographed lie. The laughter, the dancing, the clinking glasses. It was all a facade, a smokescreen for something darker turning beneath the surface. She moved toward the exit, her heels echoing too loudly, her body screaming what her mind couldn't yet name. She wasn't safe. At the front door, a guard blocked her path, his face unreadable. "Your phone's still being processed," he said, pressing an earpiece as if receiving orders. She snapped, "It's a phone, not a passport." He didn't flinch, just nodded tightly and told her to wait. As she stood there, a muffled shout pierced the air. Not loud enough to stop the party, but sharp enough to feel intentional, like a crack in the script. It came from the roped-off hallway. Instinctively, she glanced over, catching a glimpse of the gold chain swaying. The curtain behind it parted just enough to reveal a dimly lit staircase descending into shadow. A silhouette moved, someone being pulled, not led. The curtain snapped shut. Another woman appeared behind her, her hand light on Gwen's back, her whisper urgent. "Don't make it worse for yourself." Gwen turned, but the woman was gone, melting into the crowd. The mansion felt like a maze now, the lights dimmer, the music a pulse that drowned out reason. Diddy appeared again, his eyes locking onto hers, flat, unreadable, not a threat, but a reminder. "You were invited. You stay quiet." Gwen forced herself to move, heading to the bar to buy time. The room was thinning, the energy shifting from forced revelry to something heavier, more guarded. An older woman, elegant with diamond earrings, sat beside her, her posture too perfect for the late hour. She didn't introduce herself or offer small talk. Instead, she leaned in, her voice low. "You shouldn't stay past midnight. It's not a party then. It becomes something else." The words hit like a warning shot, their meaning vague but unmistakable. Gwen's stomach twisted. She wanted to ask more, but the woman was already gone, her seat empty as if she'd never been there. The bartender slid another glass of water her way, his eyes blank, and Gwen realized he was part of it too, trained to see nothing, say nothing. She scanned the room. The gold chain still hung, the hallway dark, the glass room a void. The girl's face flashed in her mind, those terrified eyes begging for someone to see her. Gwen's resolve hardened. She had to get out. The path to the exit felt endless, each step heavier than the last. The guards at the door stalled again, their excuses thin. "Your phone's coming," one said, his earpiece crackling. She heard another sound then, a low, muffled cry from the roped-off section, too brief to pinpoint but too real to ignore. Her heart raced. She pushed past the guard, her voice firm. "I'm leaving now." He hesitated, then stepped aside as a man in a velvet blazer approached, her phone in his hand. His smile was careful, calculated. "They said you should have this." Who's they? She pressed, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her. The ones who know, he replied, stepping back. She took the phone, walked out, and didn't look back. The cool night air hit her like a lifeline, but her heart still pounded as she locked her car doors and drove away, the mansion's glow fading in her rearview mirror. The next morning, her phone buzzed with a text. No number, just words. You saw too much. Stay beautiful, stay quiet. The message wasn't a threat. It was a command, chilling in its precision. Gwen stared at it, her mind replaying the night. The girl, the glass room, the gold chain. She hadn't told anyone, hadn't texted or called, yet they knew. They'd been watching her every move, maybe even her thoughts. 3 days later, another message arrived. A photo of the hallway where she'd lingered, taken from behind her. The angle was exact, as if someone had stood inches away, documenting her curiosity. Her stomach churned. This wasn't just surveillance, it was a message. We were close enough to touch you, and we still are. Fear gave way to clarity. If they were trying this hard to silence her, her voice mattered. She made a call, not to the press or her publicist, but to a former attorney, a quiet figure who understood power's underbelly. She told him everything. The guarded rooms, the terrified girl, the choreographed silence. He listened, then warned, if you talk, they won't just attack your reputation, they'll bury it. Gwen's response was firm. Let them try. That girl's eyes haunted her, a silent plea she couldn't ignore. She wouldn't let her vanish. Weeks later, the subpoena came and Gwen didn't hesitate. She walked into the courtroom with the same quiet confidence she'd carried into the mansion, but this time, it was fueled by purpose. The room fell silent as she took the stand, her presence commanding without a hint of theatrics. She faced Diddy, seated at the defense table, his eyes unreadable but his posture tense. I know what you're thinking, she told the jury, her voice a blade of truth. Why didn't I speak sooner? Why didn't I run out screaming? Because I've lived in Hollywood for over 2 decades. I know how power protects itself, with money, glamour, and fear. But she described the mansion as a machine built to erase stories. No cameras, no phones, no trace. Every detail was designed to vanish, but some things, she said, you can't unsee. She spoke of the girl, her face etched in Gwen's memory, and the others who saw but stayed silent, names the jury would recognize, faces from their screens, too afraid to speak. She recounted a stylist she'd known, a woman who'd vanished from the industry after refusing an NDA tied to another Diddy event. This machine doesn't just silence voices, Gwen said, her voice catching for the first time. It erases lives. The courtroom was a vacuum, every word landing like a stone. Diddy's defense team stopped scribbling, their pens frozen. Gwen leaned forward, her gaze steady. I was one of the lucky ones. I got out before I became part of the system, but that girl didn't. I don't know her name, but I see her face every day. I'm here to dig her story back up. She paused, letting the weight settle, the silence louder than any outburst. She spoke of the warnings, the whispered advice, the cryptic messages, the photo that proved she was watched. She described the guests who played their parts, the guards who enforced the rules, the house that swallowed secrets whole. There were others there, she said, her voice rising slightly. People you know, people who smiled for cameras the next day like nothing happened. They're not here because they're afraid. They saw what happens when you ask the wrong question. She told of the stylist again, her career erased overnight, her name scrubbed from every contact list, every gig. This isn't just about one night, Gwen said. It's about a system that protects itself, that buries anyone who steps out of line. Her testimony wasn't just a recounting, it was a dismantling. She described the mansion's layout in vivid detail, the velvet walls, the heavy chain, the blacked-out glass room, like a map of a crime scene. She spoke of the older woman's warning about midnight, the guard's stall tactics, the man in the velvet blazer who knew too much. She didn't embellish, she didn't need to. The truth was raw, unfiltered, and it burned. You can call me dramatic, she told the jury, her eyes never leaving theirs. You can say it's too late, but you can't say I'm lying, and you can't say I didn't warn you. The courtroom was still, every heartbeat louder than breath. Diddy's team sat motionless, their notes abandoned. The judge, usually a figure of detached authority, leaned forward, caught in the gravity of her words. Gwen's testimony wasn't just a story, it was a reckoning, a crack in the foundation of an industry built on silence. As she stepped off the stand, the room remained frozen, the weight of her words lingering like smoke. The silence that had once shielded giants like Diddy was fracturing, each syllable of Gwen's testimony chipping away at its power. She hadn't just told a story, she'd exposed a machine, one that thrived in the shadows of Hollywood's glamour, feeding on fear and compliance. The girl's face, That fleeting glance was the spark that drove her here, and Gwen made a silent vow she would not let that girl disappear. The industry might try to bury her reputation, her career, her voice, but she was done staying beautiful, done staying quiet. As the courtroom doors closed behind her, the tremors of her words rippled outward, threatening to reshape an empire that had stood unchallenged for too long. Nothing would look the same again.